Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the pre-town meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. My name is John Donahue. I'm the town moderator. I'm joined at the front table here by Town Council Ted Peatnick. To your left and to your right is our 4/5 of our Finance Committee. We've got Gil Aligi, Jim Halleck, Maria Gomes, and Linda DeMello up front. Wow, we're in a good place tonight. This is the annual town meeting, pre-town meeting. This is an opportunity for the town officials, and particularly the Finance Committee, to walk everybody through the annual town meeting warrant, open up the floor for questions, discuss the town meeting process if that's necessary. Town council is here to address any particular questions with regards to either the structure or legality or any other questions around the individual articles or the processes. We've got two meetings next Monday night at 6:45. We'll start with the special town meeting, and I believe there are copies on the table for those that don't have them. There are 11 articles. Most of it, I would say, is ticking and tying some finances from fiscal year 2018. I'm not going to review all these individually tonight. There are a couple of expenditures for unfinished construction projects over at the Liberty School, some continual items that we've been funding over the years for things like the Town Hall or North School. And there's a vote to transfer $100,000 into the general stabilization account. That's a continuation of prior policy. And we continue to fund Article 10. We continue to try to fund the OPED, which is Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund, in anticipation of an obligation that's many years down the road, but it's proper planning to think about that now. And then there's a Article 11, an article for a new hot water tank over at Raynham Middle School. So we'll try to start the special at 6:45. I'm not quite sure what we're going to see for turnout next Monday night, so I guess I'll pause here and ask that folks try to arrive a little bit early, because I would imagine that if we exceed our normal 50-ish people that need to be registered, and I think we will, then we probably will have a bit of a line at the reception desk. So if you want to get in and participate in the special town meeting, I would strongly suggest that you try to arrive a bit on the early side, perhaps 6:30-ish. I intend to start the special town meeting on time at 6:45, if possible, so as not to delay the annual town meeting. The annual town meeting, and again, the special town meeting shouldn't take much more than 15 minutes to complete, barring any unforeseen discussion or debate or amendments. So we should be ready to go with the annual at around 7 o'clock. Now for that, I don't intend to start the annual town meeting when we have a quorum, which is what we usually do, because quorum is only 25, but we'll be monitoring the situation in the lobby, and if there are people in line, we probably won't start the annual town meeting until everybody is seated in the auditorium, so as to give everybody a chance to participate. Finance Committee, anything you want to mention before we start reviewing the articles?
Just the Finance Committee met with the department heads and reviewed all the budgets, and we recommended them all unanimously.
Unanimous. Very good. So before I leave the special town meeting, any questions on that warrant? Is there anything there that anybody wants clarification on, that anybody wants to discuss here tonight?
Well,
Sir?
first question is, do we need to go through the formality of the mic and introductions to ask questions?
You do not tonight. No.
Okay.
Other than perhaps for the benefit of Raycam.
Well, John 60122 First Street. Is that way?
Does that work, Emily?
On Article 3 and 4, at the, I'm sorry, not 3 and 4, 4 and 5, at the special town meeting in the fall, there was an article for $25,000 for the finishing of that. And I don't remember if it was voted down or if it was taken off the ballot because it was not to what was previously specified. Well, I see now that they're back there now, and it's gone from $25,000 to $35,000. And it's kind of vague when you say finished construction. Is there someone here who can tell me what it is you're gonna do for $35,000?
I believe Mr. Buckley is in the back there, and I concurred, John, that that article was dismissed in the fall due to, I guess the best way to put it would be, the description of the article was not perfectly aligned with what was actually going to happen.
And to that point, you know, these articles still, at least Article 5, still talks about the parking lot. And if you go back to the original proposal for money to do that basketball court, it said nothing at all about a parking lot. And now we're back again trying to finish a parking lot that was never authorized in the first place. There needs to be some consistency, is my point. So Ed, if you could tell me what it is you're doing with the 15,000, and then I guess I know what you're doing with the 20,000.
So the two articles, the 15,000 is to finish the basketball court, and approximately 10,000 of that cost is to put a 3-coat sealer system on the court to protect the asphalt, provide a traction safe surface for kids to play on, and do the striping. And you know, the original project, I wasn't involved in developing that, but we determined that it was, you know, practical to try to do the best job we could when we put this thing together. And got estimates to do that 3-coat system, which is pretty common for that type of court. And so the price is around $10,000 to do that work.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
Was the original intent or the original proposal for that to be 1 court or 2, as it was in the past?
I wasn't part of the original proposal. Again, I was tasked with building or rebuilding the court. The court that was there was not a conventional court. It was not to any kind of standard. It had 4 hoops, but it wasn't. So we, in discussion during developing the project, we determined that the best interest of the town would be to build 1 court with more room around the court for safety. We tried to increase the distance from the pavement to the court to prevent, you know, cars from going. There was no previous curbing in that area, so the court was level with the access road on both sides of it. We felt that was a safety issue. It didn't address ADA compliance, so we added a curbing, handicap accessible sidewalk, 2 handicap accessible ramps, concrete sidewalk for longevity, and also a grass strip before you get to the fence to protect the court. With that in mind, there wasn't room to do 2 full-size courts. So that's why we chose the one with the enhanced safety features around it.
So to your knowledge, you don't know if the original proposal was to just replace what was there?
I really don't know. Maybe
Who
somebody else can
proposed
speak to
it?
that.
Who was organizing it? If
It
you
was part
were
of-
the guy who was constructing it, then who was?
It was part of Parks and Recreation initially, and, you know, Liz Francis at the
This was the
time.
one who objected to it last time, if I
Yeah,
remember
she was
correctly.
involved with me during the early scheduling and planning of this thing, but it never, you know, it never got finalized before she left. So we proceeded along to try to do the best thing we could.
Then I guess I have one more question. I guess
Please.
that's for you, Town Council, if I may.
Certainly.
Article 5 still talks to the finishing of construction of a parking lot. Parking lot still wasn't in the original article that funded redoing that basketball court. Can we now do it? I mean, what's changed? Removing it last time was because parking lot wasn't in the original proposal. We're still trying to push for the parking lot.
I'm not sure why it was removed last time. I remember the whole discussion taking place, but I'll have to go back and take a look at it and get back to you.
I think Mr. Donahue remembered
Yeah.
it correctly.
So the question that Liz asked at the time was, if I'm not mistaken, do you guys have an old warrant, a fall warrant? I believe it was described as $25,000 to finish the basketball court. Ed, does that sound right? And
That's
then,
correct.
and then,
I believe the words parking lot were in there, and that's what she objected to.
yes, I think you're right. So that article was dismissed. What they have done is brought it back in 2 articles, and they've it's obvious what they've done. They've said we need 15,000 to finish the basketball court, and now we're asking for a brand new appropriation of $20,000 for the purpose of finishing construction to the parking lot. So they've broken it down into 2 projects, and they're perfectly within their right to do that.
Well, I understand, I mean, the 15,000 makes sense, you gotta
Yep.
finish it, there's no question about it. But again, it still talks about a parking lot that was never authorized in the original article, back when we,
Forget about that article's long gone. This, Article 5 is a new authorization. Essentially what they're saying is, we're asking the town to authorize a parking lot. We'll work
I don't wanna
work
be a
on
dead
parking lot.
horse, but the word finishing implies that it's not brand new, it's a continuation of what was there before.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
John,
And I'm all done.
I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. What we're calling finishing is the main parking area that we added is at the binder course layer.
Mhm.
So we need to put the second layer on. We have a catch basin that we installed that's below grade. We need to raise that. We also need to make a repair along the new curbing and the sidewalk and tie all that together. And then stripe it for safety to lay out the actual parking. There's been no parking layout there for many years, so we wanted to try to improve the
I understand,
parking as well.
it's just a plain, it's just, I don't know, it's like we're doing the same thing we did for the special town, the last. But anyway, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ed, I appreciate it, thank you, Mr. Moderator, for
Thank you, John.
tolerating me.
Any other questions on the special town meeting warrant before we move on? Chief?
John, I'll be amending Article 2 from 110 to 50,000.
110 down to 50.
Yes.
Chief, in writing with 4 copies, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to the annual town meeting.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Article 6,
Yes,
30 grand for a brand new van.
yes.
Is there something wrong with a quality used one?
Who sponsors this? Who would like to respond to that? Selectman? Mr. Pacheco.
Article 6, what's the man?
The 30,000 for the new vehicle is not just the new vehicle, it's a retrofitting it to the specifications of the animal control with the cages and other security attachments on the inside of it. And why we aren't going the used road, we've gone the used road for the past 30 years, and every year or two we have to junk it and start all over again. So we've made a decision to request funding for a new vehicle for the first time in as long as I can remember for animal control.
And the 30 grand includes everything that needs to be done to it?
Everything, yep.
All right.
Thank you. Any other questions on the special? Okay, seeing none. Over to the annual. So the annual town meeting is, it's what I guess we would call the business meeting of the town. This is what will set up the town for financial expenditures and appropriations for fiscal year 2019, which starts July 1st. So I think most town meeting regulars would recognize that most of, if I would say at least half of these articles are what we would consider housekeeping or boilerplate. They appear in the same place every year. As you get towards the back half of the warrant, that's where the newer business comes in, the one-time items, whether they be expenditures for large items or one-time expenditures or zoning articles. Much like the special, we'll move through the annual article by article. I guess this is probably a good point to say that I intend to address the articles in order as they are printed, so 1 through 24 in order, unless anybody has a very, very good reason to take an article out of order. It's generally to be frowned upon, so what is a good reason? If there are contingent articles, so if Article 9 were contingent on passing of Article 11, we would take Article 11 forward and move it as such. I know in the past, from time to time, people come out for one particular article, and listen, we all want to get home early, right? So from time to time, there's an effort to move an article forward. But I would caution people that an article is never completely done or put to bed until we dissolve town meeting. So we could pull article, let's say Article 20. We could pull it forward to the first position and be done by 7:15 with Article 20. But then later in the night, somebody could get up and motion reconsideration, and Article 20 would be right back on the floor if reconsideration passed. So if you have a pet article that's on the warrant, you're going to want to stay till the meeting is dissolved, regardless of where it appears. So I would hope that the town meeting floor would follow what's been true practice here, tried and true practice in Raynham, and that's to go in order. Basically, for those that aren't regulars at town meeting, the articles are called and voted on by voice. Most articles, I would say probably 3/4 of the articles, are simple majority. If it's determined by the moderator that a simple majority is evident, we'll move on and we'll go to the next article. From time to time, some of the louder voices in the room carry the day, and it's very difficult up front to really determine how many votes were actually cast in the yea and how many were cast in the nay. So we will vote by a show of hands. And when you come into town meeting, you'll be all, when you register at the table, you'll all be giving a card. That's your voter card. Please be very careful and hold on to that for the entire night, because if I do have to come down off the stage and count individual votes along with one of the town clerk's tellers, we count the cards. We don't count hands, because you'd be surprised at how many times I see this. So we count the cards, so please don't lose your card, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. That card's going to could be very important next Monday night. With regards to the last, I said there were 3 ways to vote: voice, show of hands, and a secret ballot. Secret ballots are few and far between, but they do happen. In order to achieve a secret ballot, 25 people must stand in place and ask for a secret ballot. We'll talk about that more Monday night if we get the sense that there will be a request for a secret ballot. If there is a secret ballot, it's a very, very laborious and involved process for no other purpose than maintaining the integrity of the vote. And Town Clerk Sylvia and I have already talked about and strategized how we would achieve a secret ballot. We're both very comfortable with the process, but it will take time. I'll caution you. It will take some time to make sure that it happens, and it happens in a professional manner, and there can be no reason for anybody questioning the vote. It will involve sworn tellers, and it will involve police officers. So there won't be any room for anything other than an accurate vote to happen. Other things too, if you want to question a voice vote, that takes a vote of 7. If anybody questions a vote, I have no problem coming off the stage and doing a hand count. That doesn't bother me at all. We can usually achieve that pretty quickly. Point of order is just that. If somebody has a question during the process, just rise in place and loudly proclaim point of order. If you have a question, you want clarification. One of the things, we move quickly at town meeting, especially when the ballot is, when your warrant is less controversial. I sometimes feel that I'm moving too fast, but nobody slows me down, so we move quickly. But I encourage everybody, especially those that are not frequent attendees of town meeting, to ask questions when it's appropriate. We would much rather, I think town council would agree with this, we'd much rather have questions about process or procedure answered on the floor to your satisfaction, as opposed to post-meeting when we have to explain actions to the Attorney General. That's not what anybody ever wants, and we've avoided that over the years. So I'm going to pause there and ask the room if there's any questions about processes or procedures with regards to town meeting.
Is a person allowed to speak more than once on an article?
Yes, provided there's nobody that wants to speak that hasn't spoke yet. So you get up at one microphone, and you know the way it's set up, John.
Yeah.
There's 2 microphones. There's a line of 6 on one side. There's a line of 2 on your side. After I'm done with the person behind you, I have to flush that line first before I come back to you.
Can I request that the wire be connected to the microphone on my side this time? Thank you.
Yeah, we can achieve that, I'm
And
sure.
it wasn't at the
Why
last
would
meeting.
you want that, Joe?
Not that my voice needs
Yeah.
amplification, but nevertheless, it'd be nice.
Yeah, no, we'll make sure that's connected for sure. But Dwayne is right, you don't really need a microphone. But we do like to have it on tape, so. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'm just gonna briefly go through some of the, what I would consider the non-controversial or less controversial articles, because there generally aren't a lot of questions. So Articles 1 through 7, with the exception of Article 3, and I'll talk about Article 3 in a second. 1 through 7 are placeholder articles. They are here on every annual town meeting. They're what we would call housekeeping. Article 1, minor town officers. Article 2, to accept the report of town officers. I'll talk about Article 3 in a second. Article 4, we make a contribution to the Legion Post. Article 5 authorizes the town treasurer to borrow from time to time, short-term borrow from time to time in anticipation of revenue. Article 6 authorizes the selectmen to sign contracts. And Article 7 authorizes the selectmen to enter into contracts for expenditures of any funds that are allocated by the Commonwealth for town infrastructure. So back to Article 3. Unless there are questions on Articles 1 through 7, absent Article 3. There usually aren't. I'll assume there won't be tonight. Article 3 is the town budget. This will take a little bit of time to get through. In the back of your town meeting warrant, you'll see, starting on pages outnumbered, starting after the return of the warrant, where you see the names of the selectmen on the right-hand side, the Town of Raynham General Fund budget for fiscal year 19. I will go line by line. If you see in the left-hand margin, if you see a department with a number, that is an actual account that needs money appropriated to it. So I will go line by line, reading off the department name on the left, so in this case, moderator, and on the far right, the fiscal year 19 recommendation. So I will read moderator, $1,000, and I'll pause. If anybody has a question on a particular line item, all you need to do is stand in your place and get my attention and say, hold, right? Hold. That's all you gotta say, hold. Make sure that I hear. And what we'll do is we'll mark that down. We'll continue on. We'll come back to that. We'll continue on until the budget is completely read into the record. And then we will go back and we will address those line items where a town meeting voter asked for hold. And what will happen then is, if you ask for us to hold, you'll come to the microphone and state your question or concern with that line item. And then the town department heads or selectmen or finance committee will address your concern. If your concern results in an amendment to the line item, then that kicks off a process that can take a few minutes, but we need to get it right. And so let's say moderator, $1,000, somebody arose and said, motion to amend that to $100,000, okay? That would be wonderful, it wouldn't pass, but if let's say it did pass, what we would then have to do is also, at the end, once we went through all of those line items with amendments, either raises or reductions, then we would have to amend the bottom line at the very end where you see total, the 38,207 and change. And that needs to be a balanced budget on the way out, right? So that can take some time from time to time. But those are few and far between. Is the Finance Committee aware of any budget line items that will be amended? No? Okay. Not to say it can't come from the floor or from one of the department heads. But that process will take a little bit of time. And once we're through our 3, then we're on to the warrant articles that are what we would consider new business or not housekeeping. So I'll pause there. Articles 1 through 7. Any questions, concerns, including the budget? No? Dwayne?
I have a comment, excuse me, on, I'm sorry. The budget overall, in all of the years I've looked at the budget, I've never
seen one where the forecast revenue exceeded the budget by $1,800,000 plus. So I think I'd like to congratulate the managers and the finance committee. That's a marvelous thing. I also would like to have an understanding of the departments when their budget is less than the prior year. Fire department is one, police department is one, they're both down about 20,000. And I think the maintenance department is down. Obviously, there must be less people involved, that's all. It's just interesting. I have no complaint with it whatsoever. Thank you.
Chief, you want to comment on the budget being down, or is there extenuating circumstances there?
Yes, when we figured last year's budget, Deputy Chief Murphy retired in July, and it was an oversight on my part that we figured for 27 guys instead of 26. So that money I still have left, and that's why I've reduced on the special town meeting what I need to fulfill line of duty personnel and sick overtime. So I still have money in my salaries account to help offset my overtime budget.
Very good. Chief Donovan still around, or did he, who covers police? From FinCom?
Myself? It's not overly important, John, I was just interrupted, that's all. Don't see it very
Just a
often.
slight reduction.
Yeah, it's very small.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget, or Articles 1 through 7? All right, we'll move on. Article 8. This is the offset receipts account for the before and after school daycare run by Park and Rec. It's an authorization to spend out of the account to fund the program. And if my understanding, if it's similar to prior years, that it's funded by fees and charges from the users of the program. So it's a mechanism of town meeting to authorize expenditures, but it also explains that the funds are coming in on the other side, so it's not actually an expenditure of the town, net. Article 9, this is the annual funding, or for the first half of fiscal year 19 for the ambulance receipts account. Our ambulance account is run and funded by users, I guess is the best way to put it, and we fund that twice a year, at the annual and then again at the special in the fall. So, questions on those two? Seeing none. Article 10. This funds the sewer department. You can see that $2.3 million number in the breakdown of how that money is spent. Salaries and wages, expenses, and various insurances and indirect costs. Article 11 is another sewer-related article, which a couple of years ago, this used to be one big article, but we divided this, and Article 10 is the operational budget for the sewer department, and Article 11 covers the debt service for the construction aspect of the sewer, both pipe in the ground and the maintenance facility down at the end of Titicum Extension. Questions on any of those self-funded or more or less self-funded articles? Article 12, debt service for the middle school, as well as the two renovations to La Liberté and Merrill, and for the regional high school. So this is all of the Raynham portions of the school district debt rolled into one article. It's about $1.5 million a year. And Article 13, I think, is going to prompt some discussion. So before I move to 13, any questions on Article 12? Yes, Lorraine?
I don't know if this is an appropriate question at this time, but Does Bridgewater owe this money for the Bridgewater Raynham High School, the other school that they're using now?
You're right, it's not an appropriate question for town meeting, but as this is an informal meeting, I can't answer that question, but then I don't want to put anybody on the spot to answer it, but if anybody in the audience with knowledge of that would like to take a minute to explain it, this would be the time, and if not, we'll just move on. We'll move on. Article 13, phase, I believe phase 7, yes?
Yep.
Phase 7 of town sewer. First step of that process is for town meeting to authorize an appropriation of $6.2 million to pay for everything associated with phase 7. The article is very descriptive with regards to neighborhoods and with regards to how the money is being spent and various sources and how the money is allocated between the town's portion and the taxpayers via the betterment fee. I'm going to pause there, and I see our new commissioner, Mr. Bickle, and our former commissioner, Mr. Luciano. If either one of you want to take a few minutes and explain phase 7 to the folks.
Sure.
One last hurrah. Go ahead.
Just when you thought you were gonna get through it, has everybody's not here for the sewer article? Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What the commission did over the past 3 years, which consisted of, the first year was Mr. Chavo, myself, and Mr. Bencourt. Then in years 2 and 3, Mr. Roster joined us. And then I stepped down at the end of my term last month, and Mr. Pickle, who's with us here tonight, is going to serve on the commission. Unfortunately, the chairman, Bencourt, couldn't be here tonight, so here I am to step up for the last time. What we did over the past 2 years is an analysis of where we were at and what we have left to do. And through phase 6 that had been completed over the past 2 years, for many of you that have just obtained sewer service, that's primarily in South Raynham, Locust Street, down to 44 and across 44. The amount of homes brought us to approximately 92% of the community that is now eligible for sewer. Now, not everybody signs up right away. Probably about roughly 76% of those eligible have signed up. So we've talked to the selectmen to make sure that as they promote future growth, to make sure that we keep in reserve the amount of gallons that we still need to have for future development, and for those that haven't tied in yet, along with the balance of the community that we still want to try and get hooked up. And I can say that the selectmen have been very receptive to that request. So what we did is we looked at what was left, and we put together a plan of the streets that are listed in your warrant. Some of those came from citizen petitions, residents who came to us and said their neighborhoods were at the point where their systems were failing. Their septic systems would have needed to be replaced, and they had petitioned us to explore putting sewer service in their neighborhoods. Clearly, it's a benefit to each resident in that neighborhood because of the cost. It's cheaper to hook into the town system than to put in a new septic system, but the whole town benefits overall as well. Protects the aquifers that may run underneath your water sources. It builds a better safety, public health safety, from not having overflowing septic systems. And also, sideline benefits is you're going to get a new curb-to-curb road when we put the pipe down that street. Many of the communities that you drive through that abut us, they put the strip down the road and that's it, and they leave it that way. The sewer commission does that the first year, you let it settle. Mr. Buckley inspects it. We use his expertise, and he tells us when we go back and do curb-to-curb. And then you're going to get a road that lasts 15, maybe 20 years, done right. Hopefully. Depending on each winter we have. So you get that added benefit of, as well as safety on our roadways. So when we put this plan together, we tried to do 2 things. First of all, keep in mind those neighborhoods that had immediate need and the cost. And what we did is we worked with our town treasurer, who's here, there he is, Mr. King, thank you. And we took a look at the overall town debt, and not just for the sewer, but in the school debt, and other town debt that may be coming off in the next few years from our tax rolls, to try and get as close to revenue neutral as possible. You know, we can't do it completely to revenue neutral, but to offset some of that major increase when you put another debt exclusion on the warrant and on the tax rate. And we tried to couple that with where the time would be with some of that debt would be automatically falling off anyway, so there would be a minimal impact into the overall tax rate and your overall cost. So that's how we got to the 6.2 million and no more, and that's how we got to the particular streets that we chose. Once, if this passes, phase 7 as we call it, it's a 2-year process, we'll begin, or the commission will begin this summer. They'll start to do some work once it passes, and then they'll go over the next 2 years for the full completion of the roads that are listed. It would be let's see, it'd be 238 additional properties, 238 additional homes that would be proposed for passage of this article. And once those would be hooked up, that would get us to 97% of the town that's eligible. For those of you that were around 30 plus years ago, I remember one of the first things that the town said is the best way to do this, to make it affordable, is to do it in phases, but with the promise and the commitment that eventually we would try to get to every single neighborhood that we possibly could. And that your turn would come, because when the town's paying 75% of the cost, even those residents that don't have it yet, they're still paying for those that do have it, that 92% that do. So we also look at it as a moral obligation to try and get to as close to 100% as possible. And this gets us very close to that goal. So that's how we came about putting this plan together. We worked on the gallonage, the flow rate, because it's very important that we not exceed the contract that we have with Taunton, and that's where we flow our sewer. And to make sure, though, that we get our residents online before we get up against that capacity. Because right now we're not in any position to see Taunton grant us excess capacity from what was the amended agreement that Mr. Donahue was very heavily involved in 5 years ago.
Closer to 10.
Closer to 10, wow. Time's flying. So we want to get everybody as possible up and running before we hit that capacity, and Taunton says no more. That's it in a nutshell. Any questions? Thank you, everybody, for hopefully for your support next week. And you're not going to call me again, right?
I don't think so. No.
Celtics on at 25?
Closer to 45. And did you mention that this will require a ballot too, right?
Yeah, it's a 2-step process because it's a debt exclusion. It has to go to town meeting, and once it passes that, we anticipate, as we've done always in the past, an end of June ballot question that would be, I don't think there's anything else, Joe, that you're going to put on the ballot. So it'd be a 1-item ballot that has to pass at the ballot box because it is a debt exclusion. The reason why we're asking to accelerate that is because we want to start with a very aggressive construction schedule this year. And that's why we're not waiting until a regular election in the fall or the following April. Once again, cost escalation, as you know, everything keeps going up, and these prices that we feel very comfortable with that current aggressive construction schedule. Superintendent McGarry's here. Did I miss anything?
Well, that's good. Good presentation, Gordon. Thank you.
Well, you put it together for me.
Any questions on phase 7 of the sewer, Article 13?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I am going to propose an amendment. We should add, for a correction on one of the streets, Juniper Hill should say Juniper Hill Drive, just to be consistent with all the other streets.
Adding the word drive after Juniper Hill. There will be 4 copies of that. I don't know who, Gordon or Mr. McGarry?
I'll provide them.
Not you, Gordon, for sure. All right, very good, thank you. Anything further on Article 13? Article 14. Again, very common article throughout the years, $100,000 to fund basic infrastructure work for the highway department. Article 15, we've been doing this for a few years now to raise and appropriate $60,000 for sewer betterment fund. Article 16, unless there are questions on 14 or 15. Article 16, bond premiums for debt service. Again, sticking with sewer here. Article 17, $30,000 for state mandated recertification for the assessors department. Year 2 of a 3-year contract. Article 18, the board and colony account 26.7 to offset associated expenditures. Article 19, revolving fund for fire hazard material, fire alarm, and council on aging. This is an authorization. Was Dave Grab, or David here? It's just an authorization, right, Dave?
Correct.
Thank you. Article 20, see if the town will accept a deed in lieu of foreclosure for a property so described. I'll pause there. Anything on any of the last few articles that Mr. King? Want to talk about Article 20?
A better description of the locus.
Yeah.
So what you see here in the town meeting warrant is the legal description, but just for everybody here, I'd like to point out exactly where it is. This property is located on the outskirts of what is commonly known as the Pine Swamp, up the road on King Philip Street. It's a narrow 7.5 acre strip of land that stretches from the intersection of King Philip and Mill Street all the way down to the highway transfer station. Mrs. Poirier passed away a few years ago, and her family would like to donate the property to the town in lieu of foreclosure. Over the past few years, the taxes have gone unpaid, and quite frankly, it is cheaper to accept the property in the deed in lieu of foreclosure process than to proceed in the land court with an attorney.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to Article 21. This is a article submitted by citizens petition to rezone an area along Church Street from residential A to residential B.
I have some questions, I have some comments on it. But those of you who don't know, I'm also on the planning board in town, and the articles for rezoning are submitted to the planning board for a recommendation for or against. As it turned out, the planning board had no recommendations at all, but I was against it. And the reason I was against it is, I guess, I could read all this out loud to you, but I have a question if the two chiefs are here. I know the fire chief is here, I don't see the police chief. If your 911 operator got a call that there was a fire, and your operator said, well, where is it? And they read that description, would you know where to send the fire truck?
Yeah.
You would? Even though it talks about 400 feet along the Taunton River, Taunton River's got a
Well,
long...
I'm sure them streets are gonna be named in there. There's gonna be
But-
names.
There is nothing there. I did a little research this past Monday with Mr. Iafredi. And in fact, the property that's in question here is 241 Church Street.
Yeah.
241 Church Street was in fact a single-family home. And I wasn't picking on you, I just wanted to make
No, I
a point.
understand.
Was a single-family home. In 2011, the current building inspector, Dennis Machado, wrote a letter to the owner of that property. By the way, if there's anyone here who wants to speak in favor of this, please, I'll wait till you're done. Wrote him a letter saying that he was in violation because he had built 2 apartments, added 2 apartments to that building without a building permit. And in fact, the area is zoned residential A, and multifamily homes are not allowed in residential A. It has to be a residential B area. The owner of the property tried to go to the Board of Appeals. That was denied. He'd been instructed to take out, I guess, Bob, you correct me, you take out the kitchen and the bathroom and it's no longer a multifamily. He applied for a building permit to do that, and to the best of our knowledge, he's never come back to us and said that it's done. So what the article is all about in a nutshell is, if this passes and it's changed to residential B, he's now legal. And this is, again, I remind you, this has been going on since 2011. And I guess basically what I have a problem is rezoning done for the purpose of a special interest, whether it be a group or an individual. He had no business building those two additions. He should have went for the building permit. So if he didn't get a building permit, he obviously, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't get any inspections done either. Okay, and I don't know if we've been in the building to even know if it meets any of the codes. Could have done all the wiring, the plumbing himself on a Saturday afternoon. So my personal recommendation is that this be withdrawn, and maybe he bring it back with more definition to it. I mean, I don't see how, and this is a small group, and I've just explained it to everyone, and I'll be glad to do it in town meeting, but I don't see how anyone could look at that and say, oh, I know where that is, that's a good thing to do. You know, I didn't know what it was. I had to research it. We spent, I don't know, maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes, because Bob was aware of it. And it's just not right. It's just not right.
So
whatever it's worth.
No, it's, town council and I spent some time earlier tonight discussing Article 21 and Article 22. Because in my opinion, Article 22, I have the same concerns about Article 21 as I do in Article 22, which is, are they descriptive enough to sufficiently warn the voters exactly what action we are proposing for town meeting to take? And as moderator, you know, what they teach us at moderator school, and there really is moderator school, is you are to give as much latitude as you possibly can so as not to stand in the way of democracy. However, we do have an obligation to make sure that the inhabitants of the town were sufficiently warned that we'd be taking action, right? So,
if I may, to your point on Article 22, at least Article 22 gives you a map and a lot number, so you can go to a map and see where that is.
it does.
This thing here, 400 feet along the Taunton River. Taunton River runs all the way down into Tiverton, Rhode Island. I mean,
Yeah, and I probably should say to those wondering how these things got on the article, how these two articles got on the warrant, submitted by citizens petition, you know, the town, whether it be the Board of Selectmen when they accept the articles for inclusion, or even for that matter, the town moderator, we can't amend or change a single word of the article. So, you know, had the town tried to do this through the process, there would be much more of a descriptive component to these two articles. So,
Mr. Moderator.
unfortunately, we are stuck with what's on the warrant. They are obviously able to be amended on the floor.
Or pulled.
Dismissed, rescinded,
Whatever.
withdrawn.
But I don't mean to correct you, okay? But I had this same conversation about what we were allowed to do and not allowed to do. You remember the conversation, Dave? You want to tell him what the second line of the form to submit an article says?
As I recall, Mr. Moderator, it dealt with procedurally how to accomplish a citizen's petition. And one of the components is you have to go through the selectman's office prior to ensure that the language is such that it's acceptable for the warrant. And that wasn't accomplished. And I was handed the citizen's petition after the signatures had been verified by the town clerk.
Yep.
And I'll read you verbatim with exactly what that line says.
So these are acceptable articles. I mean, these are not, I mean, you could argue, and we probably will argue, whether they're an appropriate form. But there's nothing here that would cause me, you know, on their face to say that, you know, town meeting cannot take up this article. It's not an appropriate form.
Yeah, it's not. My only point is it's not descriptive enough.
I agree with you.
For people to make an intelligent
No, I agree with
decision
you.
whether it's right,
I agree
it's
with
a
you.
good article or not.
Right.
And it should be maybe amended, and I guess you got to go to the basis that is that do you want to allow this to happen because someone did something that they weren't supposed to do. They did it, and I'll use the term illegally, because if you don't apply for a building permit, you're performing an illegal act, aren't you, Bob? and now he wants to change the town zoning, so what he did becomes legal. Do you pass a law saying it's legal to shoot someone after you've killed your next door neighbor? I mean, I know that's an extreme, but you understand my point that I'm getting at.
And unfortunately, it's too late to amend these, right? I mean, we can't. So if we determine that town council and I will be talking about this over the next 6 days,
I
I'm
would
sure.
hope you would.
You know, if it's determined that they're not descriptive enough, then any amendment on the floor will be ruled out of order, because you'll be taking the article out of scope. So in other words, you have to sufficiently warn the inhabitants that you're taking action. If it were acceptable to write an article in such a way as to be, I guess I would say, I'm not saying that these two articles are doing this, but if you were trying to be deceptive with the intention of amending it on the town meeting floor to be acceptable in acceptable form, you've already been deceptive. You haven't warned the people of the action that you're going to take or proposing to take. So
No
we're
one
stuck.
agreed.
We're stuck with these, and it's I guess it's up to council and I to
See if it should come off or not.
see if it should.
And I'll also add that no one appeared before the planning board to talk in favor of this. I don't see anybody here, at least, that's putting up their hand to talk in favor of it.
Is there anybody in the room that would prefer to talk about Articles 21 or 22? We seem to have the same issue with both. Mr. Andrea.
Yes, Ian Andre, Article 22. I really don't like you combining the two together because they're two citizens petitions, two totally separate.
Dan, I feel better about 22 than I do about 21,
Article
if that makes you
22,
feel
I was
any
done by my
better.
attorney, so I guess I won't pay him. But Article 22, I'm doing a 55 and older development off of Route 44. And the zoning bylaw states that 55 and older are only allowed in business zone.
Yep.
They have a piece that's 40 acres, and there's less than an acre that is 2 triangular pieces. Anytime years pass, whenever the town does a zoning change, they pick 200 feet off of a main road or 400 feet. In this case, it's 400 feet. So off of Route 44, it goes back 400 feet and goes straight. And I have 2 triangular pieces in the back that I would like to go from residential A to residential to business district. They have bought 25 acres that I own, which I put under agricultural protection. So it's not affecting anybody, because I own all the abutting land next to it.
So there are no abutters other than yourself.
And it's just to complete the 55 and older development that we're working on.
Yep.
It won't stop the project if it doesn't go through, but it would make the project a lot nicer.
Yep.
My only point was Article 21, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I know.
wasn't addressing
No.
Article 22 yet.
No, the
It was just the same discussion we had. Article 21 tipped us.
Put the two together.
Well, that's why I mentioned the Article 22 at least gives you something you can go look and see where the property is. as
But I'll
opposed
use your
to-
analogy. If we sent the fire trucks, to put out a fire at Raynham Assessors Map 16, Lot 55, they got nowhere to go?
Yeah, because they go to the online mapping on the town website, and you go right to that lot, and it'll show
Okay.
you exactly where it is.
All right.
Correct, Dan? Correct?
Any other comments?
Yeah, young lady.
Dr. Piondowski.
I'm just curious, how does someone, as a citizen's petition, how do you do that? So one person can write an article and then it comes to town meeting?
I believe it's 10 signatures.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yep. Sir, signatures are then,
Registered voters.
signatures of registered voters, which are then verified by the town clerk.
Is that public record?
That's a really good question. Yes? Yes.
I requested a copy of it, and I have one here, if anyone wants to see it.
Got a technical question?
Yes, sir.
If it goes to a vote at the town meeting and it's defeated, under normal zoning changes, there's some clause, you can't bring it back for a period of time where it's a citizen's petition, does that still hold on a zoning article?
The 2 year.
I think it's at least 2 years. I'm not sure, I'll have to check.
But it applies
That's
to both
unusual.
the town warrant, a town article as well as a private.
That's my question, yeah.
I'm not the expert, you certainly are, but having dealt with zoning changes in the past years, that was what we were led to believe from previous town council.
We'll get that answer. And Any further questions on 21 or 22? 23 is also by citizens petition. It is to accept a layout of Princess Lane, Duke Drive, and Queen Circle. And there's also a deed conveyance in there as well. Mr. Buckley, why citizens petition? I'm assuming that, is this not you?
I'm sorry.
23, the road layout?
No, it's not me.
Not you. Wouldn't that normally be you? No?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes, sir.
memory serves me right, and I don't mean to dominate the meeting here, but
Too late.
I go to all the meetings. But memory serves me right, at the fall town meeting, this came up.
This was withdrawn at fall time.
And it was withdrawn because it wasn't written properly, if I remember correctly. The planning board had reviewed it and recommended adoption, but town council found something, it didn't have enough signatures, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
It didn't have the correct number of signatures for the citizens petition, so it was withdrawn. So they're bringing it back now, I assume they have the right number of signatures.
It was Attorney John Zajac that brought it up.
Okay.
It's in proper order now.
Yeah, so it's good, and they should have the opportunity to have regular streets.
Questions on 23? Mr. Andrew?
Yes, on that, normally the planning board will endorse an acceptance of a road. We have the town engineer goes out, he does all the review, we make sure all the funds are paid, we make sure the highway is happy, fire, police, everybody's happy. And then we usually endorse it, but because this was brought last year, it just stayed in the system as citizen petition.
Okay. Is this supported by the planning board?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Any further questions on 1 through 23? We'll pause there. We'll get into 24.
Drum roll, please.
Article 24, I think, is well understood. Well, I don't want to say it's well understood. It's those that have been watching it, I think, fully understand that it is a what's the word I'm looking for? Contentious, or certainly there's not a consensus in town. Whether a consensus.
You found it.
There's a lack of consensus as to where this thing is headed. So I'm not going to read it other than to, I'll sum it up in the best words as I can. It's to rezone Article Route 138 from the Taunton line to Route 495 overpass into what is being defined as a mixed-use overlay district. And this is, please, to the proponents, opponents, if I misspeak, stop me dead in my tracks. I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but I believe it is I guess first, the mixed-use overlay district is a new classification, is that? And it's described, there are definitions, it's described in the article.
20.7.
20.7 is probably being the
I don't know what the page is.
best description.
Those are what's allowed in that area.
And it's I believe it's all the parcels and to the extent of the depth of these individual parcels, is that correct? So depth of the frontage on 138, those are and I think up King Philip as well, or up First Street. You know what?
It's unfortunate.
Why don't I just let Mr. Iafredi come on up and do a better job than if I'm assuming that, or Mr. Andrew?
You can stop.
And then I have a statement that I'd like to read when he's done.
Sure.
I'm up.
You're up.
Bye-bye, Freddie.
Excuse me, but that's the first time I've seen you with a tie. You don't come to our meetings that way.
So this is a mixed-use overlay district that extends from the Taunton line up to 495. It's a zoning bylaw that's been worked on for, I believe, 7 years now. The previous planners before me did a lot of work on it. They had some help with Serped, who put a lot of this information together. When I took the position over, we put a committee together just to try to consolidate all their thoughts, and we ended up with this two-page bylaw that you have in front of you tonight. What it does allow for a mixed use. The district zoning stayed the same, however, you cast a mixed use overlay over that whole district, so it affords developers or property owners more specific uses that they are not allowed now. So we're looking for a mixed-use overlay district, which is very popular in a lot of other towns. There are a lot of other towns that have these mixed-use overlay districts, and there are a lot of towns that are actually trying to implement them today as we speak. So I know there's a lot of questions. It's a long article. We went through it at the planning board's public hearing. If I can help you answer any questions, that's what I'm here to do today.
John?
Yes,
If you ever, you might want to go to the mic if you ever prepared to say that. That'd probably be better.
And if you see my hands shaking, it's not because I'm nervous, it's freezing in here. Liz always keeps it freezing in here.
Keeps us awake though.
Yeah, or get you out of here quicker. I had intended to read this statement. I assumed that the selectmen would be at the front table as they are at a meeting, but I think they're all here spread about in the area. To the members of the board, I submit to you that the details of the article are secondary to the main issue of what we're trying to do to the area. The main issue is the manner in which the article was submitted to the warrant and by whom. I'm going to offend people here because I'm going to use names. I apologize in advance, but the truth is the truth. There's nothing here but facts. Mr. Andre discussed this article with the previous Board of Selectmen prior to one of their meetings on March 27th. I was there. I sat behind Mr. Andre and Mr. Iafredi. Now that board, like our current board, are all honorable people. But town council, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 board members sitting discussing town business constitutes a quorum and a meeting. It wasn't posted, wasn't open to the public. You should have never talked about it there. Again, you probably didn't even realize what was going on, but you should have never talked about it at that meeting with him. That's number 1. Number 2, he submitted it to the selectman's office on April 2nd. And if anybody wants to see the stamped copy of it, stamped by the town clerk's office on April 2nd. It was on the planning board's letterhead. And at the end of the article, and Mr. Moderator, if you read it, the last thing at the end of the article says what? Who is it submitted by?
I guess it says submitted by the planning board.
Correct. The planning board had no input into this article. And in fact, never saw the article until April 17th. I asked to see it at an earlier date and was refused the opportunity to see what it said. We saw it. It was given to all the members, and if you watch the planning board meeting where that public hearing was held, you will see that all the other members agreed that they had not seen it before April 17th. Our public hearing was on the 19th. It was sent to us on an email, so we at least had 2 days to review it. But we had no input to it. It was not submitted by our board. Pamphlets were then distributed in town hall, lauding the warrants of this particular one. However, there was never the permission of the selectmen to put those pamphlets in town hall. As a matter of fact, if you look at the back of the pamphlet, and again I didn't bring it up here with me, it says that this article was supported by the selectmen. And I believe at last week's selectmen's meeting, all of you stated that you did not sponsor anything. You weren't sure. One of you said you weren't sure how you were going to vote. Another one said you didn't know sponsoring, but it had your name on the pamphlet. And Joe, you specifically said, hey, I can't control what other people do. No, but you do have the right to object when someone uses your name without your permission. And that's what that pamphlet did. Fortunately, because it wasn't approved by you folks, they were all taken out of town hall. I don't know if they're anywhere else in town, and if they're still there, I couldn't tell you. They're not in town hall anymore. To further the misinformation trail, Dave, you're somewhere back there, you issued a memo to Maureen on the 5th of April, and it says, be advised that the Board of Selectmen unanimously approved to send the articles to the Planning Board's deliberation at their April 3rd meeting. The articles are as follows. Route 138 zoning changes, Route 44 zone changes, and Church Street zone changes. If you require additional information or anything else, please feel free to contact me. Dave, you must have been in a different April 3rd meeting than I was. He's not there anymore. Did he leave?
Yeah.
No such vote was taken. I've reviewed the video on that meeting 3 times. No vote no such vote was taken. I feel, and a number of people feel, because if you've driven anywhere in town for as far as Church Street to the far end of town, you've seen the signs. I feel that the article should be removed from the warrant because of the unethical and devious way it was submitted. And through legal counsel, I think you should investigate the removal of Mr. Andrade from the planning board for his actions. It's your legal duty, Selectmen, to protect our town from this type of activity. Does anyone have any questions of me? I thought not. Thank you for your time. And I guess I ask you, counsel, to make a judgment on that. That didn't follow any of the procedures for entering an article whatsoever, and it was falsely entered because the planning board did not submit that article. And I don't see any of the other planning board members here, but you can certainly question them.
Mr. Andrade.
Yes. Okay. So,
I will just say, you know, I'm giving a lot of latitude here, because this is an informal meeting.
well, I wouldn't be up here if he wasn't accusing me of everything even under the sun.
I will say that that will not happen on town meeting floor.
Okay.
We will stay to the four corners of the article, and we'll maintain a certain level of decorum.
Okay.
Now, excuse me, to the mentioning of names, but in fact, the facts of how it was entered.
If you stay factual, I will not.
All of that is factual.
You won't have a problem with me on town meeting floor. I would ask you to stay pertinent to the article, as we always do, but.
I will.
Most of what he said is a lie. Okay, so I'll start here. Technical assistance application, South Coast Rail. Now, I've been on the planning board for 18 years. I've been chairman for 16 of the years. This was our town planner at the time, Marilyn. She filled out this application, and Joe Pacheco signed for a grant that we received. I have his signature. The grant, in accordance with the Executive Order 525, signed by Governor Deval Patrick, in 2010, priority was given to applications for technical assistance to advance planning and zoning efforts which are consistent with the corridor plan, and for applications which demonstrate clear and achievable outcomes. Clear and achievable outcomes, or else they never would have given the town of Raynham $20,000. We are pleased to offer your community technical assistance at $20,000. And this goes on.
Does it say what the purpose was of the?
Please, don't interrupt me. You had your time. All right, Mr. Moderator?
Okay. Point taken.
So, there's 15 towns that received funds. Raynham received $20,000. It was one of the most expensive that the state gave out. Serpent will assist the community with a major rezoning effort along Route 138 corridor. The $20,000 technical assistance grant will support public outreach, provide detailed mapping of the existing and potential revised zoning boundaries, identify environmental constraints, setbacks, and buffers. Serpent will also assist with the preparation of zoning revisions for the town meeting. Signed by Joe Pacheco, I have a contract. Witnessed. Town of Raynham requested Serpent to assist with analysis of existing conditions along Route 138 corridor to develop conceptual alternative future for study. Whereas the town of Raynham has pledged to act in good faith to adopt and to implement the product that is deemed by both parties to be complete. Signed by Joseph Pacheco, Chairman. And here's Serpent's outline of everything that they were going to do. With the $10,000 portion of that grant, they created Route 138 corridor land use study, which is been on our website since 2012. We have a letter, Route 138 Study Committee. We formed a committee, Maryland formed a committee. Now, again, everything that was produced, everything that was done was prior to, this wasn't me. I had nothing to do with reaching out to the state for a grant for $10,000 or $20,000. This was, Marilyn was our town planner, she was our grant writer, she was in charge. This is her book, this isn't my book. She sent out a notice saying that Serpents, after the selectmen signed a contract with Serpent to move forward, she sent out this letter to committee members stating that Serpent was busy and they couldn't start until April. To the Board of Selectmen, April 9, 2012. Serpent has completed its, now this was from Maryland to the Board of Selectmen informing them, Serpent has completed its existing conditions analysis and we are ready to set our first meeting of a committee. It is my recommendation that any suggested regulatory changes necessary to move forward a particular conceptual plan should be approved by the majority of the Route 138 Study Committee. The process of reviewing and approving the recommended changes would be made by the selectmen with the input from planning board and other boards. We had 3 study committees on Route 138. The last study committee, which I think the majority of the members are here, unanimously, not unanimous, we had one vote who she said that she had to abstain because she has a lot of pressure from her First Street neighbors that she can't, she didn't want to vote.
No, I didn't say I had pressure.
No, you did. You said
I
you said you had 20 years of history with this, and you had a lot of pressure from your neighbors, and everybody was looking up to you. And there's 2 other members here.
I don't think I used the word pressure.
2 other members here. I mean, I'm not lying.
I don't think I used the word
I'm not making these things
I said
up.
I had to get back to them. I didn't think I used the word pressure.
So the committee had voted on it. It was sent to the selectmen, out of my hands. I saw a notice that went up. Maureen sent back a notice to planning board. Planning board, like we do any other time, as soon as we get the notice from selectmen, we schedule a public hearing. We did. We scheduled a public hearing. Then we had a public hearing. At the public hearing, Mr. Texera states that nobody knows anything about it. Well, a couple of members probably weren't even at the meeting that we scheduled the public hearing. And again, this has been in front of the planning board for the last 7 years. On and off, on and off, on and off. Why has it been on and off? We had Marilyn, we had John. Once this was all done, Marilyn left. And we were 99% completed. New town planner comes in. At that time, we had Mr. Shavo, Marie Smith, and Joe Pacheco as our selectman. Mr. Shavo was on the committee hiring with, we hired John. I was also asked to be on that committee. John started, he came in and he took about 6 months, took us about a year to find another town planner. He took about 6 months to get caught up to what I felt was enough to give him all the information on 138. This is a continuation of what the selectmen have signed. I am still working on the same information. It's been approved from the first study committee, and we have summary of requests. The town of Raynham requests assistance with drafting a mixed-use overlay district, encourage interaction among users, enhance business vitality, reduce vehicle traffic. All of these things have been outlined by and sent to Board of Selectmen. That was all sent to Board of Selectmen from Maryland. So we go and we close this folder.
And now I go to another town planner.
Now, I'm chairman at the whole time that this all happened, so I guess I could be like a lot of people and just drop it, okay? Joe Pacheco, Marie Smith, I have their signatures on a contract with the state of Massachusetts and with Serpent, stating that the town of Raynham will do its best to put this through, to get the best information through the best possible channels. Next town plan, John comes up. I do have a full-time job, by the way.
Was that a dig?
And we have new 138th committee, October 2013. Here's all the drafts, here's all the information John did. I told John when he came in, I said, we're 99% there, ready to go. It was a unanimous vote from the 138 Study Committee, who John Texera, Lorraine Nickerson, Donnie Francis, David Hutchison, myself, Tony Macedo, Peter Eman, and I think a couple other people. Unanimous vote to approve it and send it to the next stage. When John came in, we had our first meeting. And the meeting, in that meeting, we had John Texera, Lorraine Nickerson said we had a change of heart. We don't agree with the zoning article that we previously did. A few years went by, this is like 3 years have gone by. We don't agree with it. Okay, so our next committee, we wound up, Marilyn took 3 meetings to do all of that with Serpent. We met about 5 times, and to try to get people to show up to that type of board that many times is pretty hard.
We turned around and we could not come to an agreement. Believe it or not. After all the money that was spent, all the time that was put into this, I'm going to read this. November 20th, 2014, residents who oppose the overdevelopment of Route 138 and others who favor making zoning laws easier on business discussed their views at a forum held by the town planning board Thursday night. I told John, I said, it's about time we start getting all of the residents involved in the town of Raynham for this mixed-use overlay. One other thing to remember, there was a committee of 18 people who did Town of Raynham Master Plan in 2000. And I have it in my binder, and I can show it to you. One of the items on the master plan, not by Danny Andrade, not by John Noblin, not by anybody in the, here that we're being accused, but in that master plan, it states that one of our goals for 2020 will be for Route 138 corridor to be a mixed-use overlay area from the Taunton line to Route 495. That's 2.1 miles. 2.1 miles. The good thing is, and I think all of the residents of the town of Raynham should know, that the article that we have on the floor must be awesome, because they're not arguing about the article, they're arguing about the process. So this was done. I asked John to get involved. So let's get all the town of Raynham people involved. Residents who oppose the overlay development from Route 138 and others who favor making zoning laws easier on businesses discussed their views at a forum held by the Raynham Planning Board Thursday night. Planning Board Daniel Andrade, chairman, said that it was the first time the board had held such a meeting to formally solicit public opinion about the future of zoning for a 2.15 mile stretch road called Route 138 corridor. Route 138 is the one last area in town of Raynham that future development is most likely going to happen, Andrade said. And it is the one area in town that has been the most controversial between people wanting to do business and people wanting to stay the way it is.
So we felt it would be beneficial for the entire town to be aware of what's going on. The examination of Route 138 in recent times was probably $10,000 grant. Raynham Selectman Richard Chavo encouraged the citizens that filled the meeting room to focus on Route 138 revitalization. Richard Chavo was a selectman, fully aware that contracts were signed by the selectmen to support this article, to support the gathering of all the information. In other words, it is not just zoning, Chavo said. It cleans up some of the businesses that could stand some cleaning up on Route 138. It makes it more attractive, at least from my perspective. We don't want to see it become another Route 44. That certainly isn't the mix. In recent years, a group of residents who live in the abutting neighborhood that surrounds the Route 138 have made their voices heard at town meeting. Whenever the subject came up, striking down the attempts at rezoning around the corridor, town planner John Caraboni told the crowd that despite a lack of zoning changes in recent years, traffic has only increased. And he goes on talking about traffic. I sent John out on a couple of tasks, and one of them was to ask the state for a traffic count. 4 years has passed since we started this project. We have old traffic counts. John reached out to the state, and in 2014 we did a traffic count. More information that we gathered to get all the best information possible. Then I sent John out to knock on all doors in the residential D area, which is mainly from King Philip Street to King Philip to Britain Street, somewhere around. John knocked on other doors, and communication with homeowners in residential D district, it was discovered that the homeowners on Route 138 and had never been spoken to about their wishes and concerns of 35 homeowners in the residential D district. 28 of them supported the zoning change to their properties. 2 were opposed, 2 were undecided. So I have traffic counts, we spoke, we reached out. I've heard people say that we needed to have a little more input from residential neighbors. We did that. We have at least 50 state employees from Serpent that worked on this. This has been going on for seven years. And yes, I do drive around town and see these signs, save our homes. Let's enjoy the school systems and the fire and the police, and let's raise our taxes. Route 138, there's only one thing that we're going to be doing to Route 138 that's not currently on 138. We are introducing more residential houses, more residential living. It's a mixed use. Majority of Route 138 is business. These studies, all this information of mixed use is not something that we created. Nobody in the town of Raynham created that definition. It came from the state when this grant was issued. Easton got a grant. They're working on a mixed use. Bridgewater has a mixed use. Route 123 over there in Norton. Anybody been by Route 123? How Route 123 used to look like 138? I went over there, I was shocked. All of those pictures that I have, Bridgewater, these are all things. This is in Bridgewater, mixed use. This building was an old house, just like Route 138. Now it's a lawyer's office, 2 apartments in the back, and another office that they're renting. People say, geez, Raynham, we don't need more tax money. No, we got $1.8 million left over. Well, I'm a business guy. Let me tell you, that's not enough for a rainy day for a $40 million budget. I mean, we're gonna say that we have enough tax money in the town of Raynham? This mixed-use overlay district, again, will revitalize Route 138 to include this. This project here is the one on 123. That's out front. They have residential housing, and then they have apartments and condos. This mixed use, this is over in Taunton on 138. They have apartments upstairs and a lawyer's office. B&D's building on Route 138 is illegal. It doesn't meet the current zoning on 138. He was grandfathered in. And if anybody drives by B&D's building and says, that looks awful, let's get them the heck out of town, is crazy. That's what we want. And that's what the article will do, is help Raynham make 138 more of a mixture. You have all these small pieces of properties that nobody's gonna put their investment into. But if I can do a 3-story building, put 2 apartments upstairs, and have an insurance agency downstairs, that's the only way that you're gonna get people to invest in small house lots. Center glass, illegal. 56% of the properties currently on Route 138 do not meet the current zoning that they fall under. So, I have a lot more information. When I did make these brochures, I go on Vistaprint, my own time, my own money. And let me tell you, when John Tex, Sarah, and Lorraine Nickerson went to the building department, threw them in the trash,
No, I was the only one, I didn't throw them.
threw them in the trash,
I didn't throw them.
when we are working for the town of Raynham, and we're working for the select people who authorize everything that is being done till this day with signed contracts. I am the chairman, I was the chairman of the planning board. It is my role and my duty to make this happen. And that's exactly what I did. And if these brochures are not allowed in town hall, then take that off the warrant. Because it doesn't belong. If the selectmen are not going to support this, these brochures belong back in town hall. This is a perfect. This tells exactly why it's taken us so long. It spells out the zone area, the 2.15 miles area. It tells you exactly what's being allowed, what's not being allowed, everything that we've worked on through every single committee. After I went through John, Marie Smith was in another interview with the next town planner, Tim. In that meeting, we said, Tim, this could be, a big project for you. Route 138, we have all of this, we've been working on this, we have to get this done. I never gave the information to Tim because Tim just was not ready for it, and then he left. Along comes Bob Iafredi, a guy that, building inspector, he's familiar with construction, he has common sense, he doesn't just reach out and for nothing, he doesn't go after things. I said, I will, and I feel that you would be the perfect planning coordinator for the town of Raynham. I brought it up to the selectmen, we had a meeting, they gave him the position, we gave him 6 months or a year to see how it was gonna work out, and it works out awesome. Saving the town over $40,000 a year. I'm getting a little dry like Donald Trump, I guess, when he talks. So, I'm sorry.
Could I have one of those, please?
It's my
No,
bad.
no.
Flyer.
The flyer.
I was gonna say.
It's my last one.
Oh, that would have been good.
I know, huh?
Thank you.
You done? You?
I got a couple more things, I'll
Okay.
pass these out.
Oh, I have one, thank you.
please.
That's the statement.
Could you pass those down?
Excuse me,
When he's done, I'd like to speak again, if I may.
I thought that the selectmen voted not, that those are unauthorized, they're not to be passed out of town hall. This is a town building as well, it's not for any new citizens, but it's okay to pass them on here.
So, where I was with this, I came up and I made
Excuse
this.
me, can I just have my question?
No, I'm still at the mic, you can get up after me, okay? We've heard plenty from you. This is,
Oh, we haven't heard anything from
you people have been
Not
like
you.
Rambo running around the town of Raynham.
Yeah.
to control this.
Yeah, I think
So
this is
let's,
getting,
Dan,
this
let's
is getting
wrap,
beyond where
I'm
we
done.
should be.
let's wrap up and.
I have the brochures, everything that's in there is 100% accurate, I have the data to back it up, and it's all true. So everybody that has a sign that says Save Our Homes, you've probably been duped into those signs, go out, cross off no, and put yes for a vote.
Okay, Mr.
Thank
Connery,
you.
can I ask Mr. Andre one question before he leaves the mic, just in
Very
regards
quick,
to?
very quickly.
Very quick. Did the planning board vote to approve and submit this warrant article?
The plan board
Did
voted
the
to,
planning board vote at a meeting?
yes we did.
Okay, what meeting?
It was 3-2, it was at the scheduled public hearing.
Okay.
That was exactly how you're supposed to do it. Selectmen sent it to the planning board, and the planning board voted.
What, did you have a date?
April 19th.
April 19th. Mr. Texera is questioning, how can a planning board,
Oh, okay, wait a minute, the planning board voted after the article was submitted?
yes. But
That, no, that's all I need to know.
the article,
No, that really answers the question for me.
Okay,
It
well-
was submitted after the article was submitted and stamped.
but it was sponsored by the selectmen, the article being, the wording on it being by planning board is
With
not
all
right.
due respect, Mr. Andre, it was submitted to the town clerk on April 3rd and voted on April 19th. That's all I wanted to know.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't voted. The process of going to a public meeting is what the planning board's responsibilities were. The planning board was not the ones that were sponsoring this article. The selectmen is the one that sponsored the article.
It says.
I know it's on there as the planning board sponsored it, but the selectmen have it's sponsored it. We have a lot of new people in town. We have a lot of different departments.
Well, I'm not new to the public sector, and I
Well, I didn't put-
certainly know how a warrant has to be submitted, and I just needed clarification
No,
on
that's
the date,
fine.
so,
I didn't put it on the warrant.
okay, thank you.
So why don't we hear from town council briefly on some of the discussions he's had over the last few days.
Can I just?
We're gonna hear from town council, then we'll go back to,
This pertains to town council, Mr.
why don't we let him have his comments and then you can have your questions.
So, there was an issue that came up with regards to a discussion occurring before the selectmen on a matter that was not on their agenda. I had conversations with the Attorney General's office, and the meeting tonight was adjourned. It was posted today that this issue is going to be before the selectmen on Thursday night to be discussed there. In my conversations with the Attorney General's office, that will fix the issue of the discussion occurring with the selectmen and having not been on the agenda that evening. Now, it's my understanding, from the way it was explained to me, people came in, a conversation started up. It wasn't a closed meeting, the doors were open, people were coming in and going out, so it was not one of these situations where the meeting was closed off and it was just a conversation between the parties from the planning board and the selectmen. So in my discussions with the Attorney General's office, the issue with respect to that particular hearing is cured by adjourning tonight and meeting on Thursday and discussing it in open session before the meeting.
And I was totally at fault. That was totally on me. I went to, I was in town hall, Maureen, our secretary, asked me to stop by to sign a couple of articles, it's not articles, out of certificate of actions that we had the planning board. I stopped by the selectman's office to let them know of the public hearing that we were gonna have. I walked in, said, "You got a minute?" I kind of sometimes do that. And Mr. Pacheco did say, "Dan, we can't say anything. This is this is just, I don't remember the word he used, but they didn't say anything. I said, we're having a public hearing, it's scheduled, I'll update my brochures at that time, and I turned around, John Fixer ran in like he just put his pants on, somebody must have called him in town hall, said that Dan's in the building. So, sorry, that was all on me, that wasn't the selectmen's fault.
I also had conversations with the Attorney General's office with respect to the issue about how it got presented and how it ended up on the warrant. The Attorney General's office, based upon the information I had, did not have an issue with how it appeared on the warrant. I'll have a further conversation with them as soon as possible. I'll try to call them tomorrow morning to try to square away that issue and make sure that, I'll research what was stated tonight to make sure that the facts that I have are correct. I'll go back to them to make sure that they're correct and make sure that that's still not an issue with them. Those are the two main issues that had been brought to my attention prior to this evening. It was my understanding from my conversation with the Attorney General's office that they will be cleared up and they will be fine based upon what I said to you about the cure earlier and my conversations with them about how the article was presented. So as far as those two issues go, I believe that those are solved. I will confirm them again just to make sure. Is there another issue or something else that you folks have a concern about moving forward?
Lorraine? If you would, yes.
Lorraine Dickerson, First Street. I have a question for town council that I'm not correct on. I'm not proficient in public policy. I've never had professed to be. But this has been pointed out to me, excuse me, that our town charter says, and like I said, this may mean nothing. Every article intended for insertion in the warrant for annual or special town meetings must be presented in writing to the selectmen in accordance with law on or before February 10th in the case of the annual meeting. February 10th, this is our town charter.
I haven't seen that, so if you could send that to me at the office, that would be great, so I can just...
Is it the bylaws? We don't have a town charter.
Well, the other bylaws. Okay, I'm
Might be the bylaws, yeah. You probably want to check down the bylaws.
So if you can just send that to my office tomorrow, or fax to me, then I can take a look at it.
don't know. Now, as Dan stated, we have worked on this for many years. I have as well, John Texera has as well. And when we worked on it with Maryland, and we voted on that, that was our basis to continue. That was not the end. That was our basis. And the reason the town got the grant was because of the training. And that's why some of the things in this article, I will use for one example, like parking garages is still on there because it was, for the training. Now, over the years, because of, the citizens in the area, which I would like to state, this particular article right now involves 9 streets. It's First Street, and I always refer to First Street and King Philip Street because that's my area, that's the area I know firsthand. But it includes First Street, King Philip Street, Britton Street, Center Street, Lincoln Avenue, Gilmore, Richards, Sylvain, and Carver. And because we used to have people from Britton and other streets used to come to the meetings, and Dan, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to Dan, he had said, we tried different methods of how to come to a conclusion that would be amicable for everyone. And he was going to set aside different times at the end of the planning board meetings, which would be, at the end, when the different meetings would allow for that. But it never happened. And, and probably because the planning board was too busy, but for whatever reason. So then, let me see, I wrote down some things when Dan was speaking because and as far as B&D's property being so wonderful, I'd be the first one to agree with that. When B&D had to go before the planning board, I was there at that meeting to support them. And I have to say, I think that's a little, using that in a different light because That's an owner-occupied dwelling. It's not gonna be rented out, it's owner-occupied. Let's see. I do not agree that this article is awesome. There are some facets of this article that I am in favor of and that I had input on. But there are other parts of this article that I actually am very upset about, because the people who served on this last committee, the first meeting was in September, and it was Dan, myself, Billy Lewis, Franny McGurk, and Russ Martirano. And of course, Bob Freitas was the host. So anyway, the very first meeting, you know, like, these guys weren't familiar with any background. Well, that's how I'm interpreting it, as well as Dan and I were, put it that way. So anyway, you know, we didn't get a lot accomplished the first meeting. But I got a very bad taste the very first meeting, because one of the members on the committee asked said he needed a pen. And another committee member just took his out of his shirt pocket, threw it across the table, and said, "Here, take mine, I won't be writing anything down." So I thought, well, this is going to be a farce, you know. So okay, so that was September's meeting. October's meeting was just myself, Dan, and Billy Lewis. Do you remember that, Dan? Just us three. Okay, Franny and Russ weren't there. That was September, that was October. This was our Route 138 committee that's presenting this article. We never met in November, we never met in December, we never met in January, we never met in February. Then all of a sudden we had a meet in March. I thought they just like dismantled it or something, so we had a meet in March. So now we come in March, and you know, so this is why I said that night that I am there for the people and the residents. And I did not vote, I abstained, because I have to go back and let everybody know what's going on. It's not just up for me, you know, for me to vote. And that's why I abstained. Now, on another note, I have to say, I was extremely disappointed, because everyone on the committee, you know, some of them have served on different boards in town, like, you know, building related boards, like zoning and such, and I am not. I'm just, you know, Joe Citizen on this committee, this is it. So anyway, I was expecting guidance from my town planner, because Bob Freitas is my town planner too. He's not just Dan's town planner, he's my town planner too. And I think everyone on that committee and every other committee I've ever served on have always known that it has been my goal to always keep out 24-hour businesses, drive-up windows, and entertainment. Because let's face it, your home is your biggest investment. And you buy it, you pay off your mortgage, you want to live in some kind of peace and enjoyment. And who would really want to live next to entertainment at 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, drive-up windows and 24-hour businesses? I don't think anyone here in this room would want to do that, seriously. So, and that has always been my goal, and that is what I have always fought for fervently on any committee I've ever been on. So, and there's no one in that room or in that committee that could not know that that was not my goal. That is why I believe in this unauthorized pamphlet that it says, excuse me, uses permitted by special permit excluding residential D district. Well, it is now that I've fully come to understand this article. All this means is, and I'm just going to give you, I mean, I'll just, I don't know how to do it, but it's not big enough now. Well, anyway, if you know the area of First Street, well, I'm going to use that for example, because like I said, it's what I'm familiar with, First Street. The house on the corner of First Street that faces Broadway is residential D. The first house behind that on First Street is residential D. The house behind that house, a quarter of it, I mean, I'm not a, you know, what do you call it?
Addition.
Pardon me?
Mathematician.
No.
Surveyor?
There you go.
Yes, survey. I would say about a quarter of that, it looks like that on the map, is residential D. Now, just for an example, we have a lot available behind these homes on First Street. That much in the front is residential D, and all the rest behind it, which is about 3/4 of that lot, is residential A. So I, in fact, accomplished nothing with the 24-hour business, the drive-up windows, and the entertainment, because it's only excluded in residential D. So it can, all that residential A behind it becomes mixed-use overlay. And mixed-use overlay is just another word for business. So this residential A zone is just going to become a business, that's all. And I have to say, I am extremely disappointed that planner Bob Iufrate, he's my planner too, and he did not advise me on this, and he knew what I was trying to accomplish. And I'm very disappointed in this, and I think this article is misrepresented to everyone. And I'm very upset about it. And as far as the submission of the article, it was submitted on April 2nd. It's stamped, April 2nd. The planning board never saw it till the 17th. We had an open meeting on the 19th. And frankly, I'm very disappointed in the planning board members that did vote for this article, because I think under those suspect circumstances, they should have just objected to it. It shouldn't have even been a vote on it for a majority vote. And I also think that this pamphlet that was an unauthorized pamphlet that was allowed to circulate, and also allowed to circulate here tonight at the senior center, that it lists all the information of all the planning board members and the sponsored by the selectmen. It's even got Maureen McKinney on here. She isn't a voting member. And it says recommended by majority vote. I noticed they put all the names, all the years of service, but they don't put how it voted, because it was a 3-2 vote, and I think people should know that. It was a 3-2 vote. So yes, it was a majority, but it was a 3-2 vote. And as far as pictures go, because Dan showed his pictures, I have pictures as well. I didn't know we were going to be showing the pictures tonight. But yeah, this is, which no one's going to really be able to see this, I will pass them around. But this is an owner-occupied business right now in Raynham. This is not an owner-occupied business right here in Raynham. And I don't think anybody would really want to live next door to that. This is a dumpster here, with a house right here across the street. They have to look at this dumpster. This is a close-up of the dumpster. Not everything is beautiful when you mix, a business and apartments. This is a parking lot which allows for the donation fence, and this is what they end up looking like. This fence fell down on a property on King Phil Street this past year, and Bob Iufrate didn't get it addressed right away after John Tixer asked me to look into it. People that used to have to go around that yard just were cutting through that yard. You can see the people in here cutting through. This is another home right now on 138 in the business zone with this lovely dumpster. And I really didn't intend to speak much tonight except for that February 10th date, because I know really speaking here tonight is futile, because it only matters on May 21st. But I do say, I don't know how this article got on the warrant, submitted by one person, and one person only, on April 2nd, when none of the planning boards saw it till April 17th, and it was discussed at the April 19th meeting. To me, it just doesn't make sense. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Iufrate? I'm assuming you're rising to speak.
If you let me, thank you. So there was a lot of work put into this article to try to, take care of all the concerns everyone had. There's a lot of concerns. No article's perfect. This isn't a perfect article, but it's pretty close. But if you look at 20.8, we tried to shelter the residential D district by not allowing hotels, parking garages, drinking establishments, entertainment, drive-through windows, and 24-hour operation, just like what do I need to ask for? If you look at 20.5B, when there's a conflict, you resort to the existing zoning standards. So there's safeguards built into this whole article, so things like that can't happen. Again, it's an overlay district. We've taken a lot of different things from other towns. A lot of this was put together before I became, my new position as a planning coordinator. And we consolidated what Serpent had put together and John Charbonneau put together into this smaller document. I also want to point out that the planning board endorses zoning articles after they have a public hearing. The planning board did not present this article, they just endorse it after they have a public hearing, like they do any kind of zoning article. It's something that has to go through the process, and that's the process it went through. So the planning board endorses this, it doesn't recommend it, it's an endorsement from the planning board after the submission of the article. And I'm here to answer any other questions if anyone has any more questions.
Mr. Moderator, I'd be brief
Teixeira.
and just rebut a couple of statements made by Mr. Andrade as he was able to rebut some of mine. First of all, I'd like to assure you that I don't show up to the selectmen's meeting putting my pants on. I think the selectmen here will tell you that it wasn't just a random because someone calls me. I've been to all of your meetings since somewhere around the middle of February. Would you agree to that I show up every meeting, sit in the back of the room, and usually ask dumb questions, but I'm there all the time. Secondly, to clear up a point, when I looked to the chairman of the finance committee, he talked about the $1.8 million, and that's not enough for a rainy day fund, if you would. Would you please enlighten him as to that has nothing to do with the stabilization account, which I believe is around $1.5 million right now. So that 1.8 is an addition, would be in addition to that, if you were to add it to that. My point being, we have a stabilization account that takes care of a rainy day. This 1.8 that someone mentioned has nothing to do with that. Do you agree?
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews stated that we're not opposed to the article, okay? We're opposed to how it was introduced. First of all, I'm very surprised at the Attorney General's decision on that, Town Council.
With
Okay,
respect to
because
what,
if that
sir?
isn't going outside of what the ground rules are, I don't
With
know
respect to
is.
what, sir? Can you please repeat that?
I'm surprised at what you've learned from the Attorney General, that he thought the meeting with the selectmen was okay, and how it was submitted was
Okay, so
okay.
first of all, I never said the meeting with the selectmen was okay. And we would not take measures to remediate that if it was okay. What I said was, in my conversations with the Attorney General's office, in order to solve the problem that was created on that particular date, we then decided that the best thing to do and the easiest way to do it was to adjourn the meeting tonight, have a meeting on Thursday night. If it had been okay, which is what you just said, then I would not suggest that they do what they did today, which is post the meeting for Thursday, adjourn the meeting tonight, and have a meeting on Thursday night to do the exact same thing that occurred that day, only in open session. So at no point in time did anybody say that it was okay.
Okay.
If it had been okay, I would not be instructing them to do something different.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank
Certainly,
you
no,
for the
thank
explanation.
you.
We are opposed to the article. And yes, I was on some of the committees, and it was going well, but the article has changed. When this was getting ready to come before the planning board for the public hearing, Mr. Iafrades reached out to Serpent, who was part of that, putting that plan together back in 2012, if memory serves me right. And at the public hearing, Serpent didn't do that. They didn't do it because they knew there was a conflict and a difference of opinions between Mr. Andrade and myself, and they asked that we maybe get together and try and resolve that. Dan chose not to make me aware of that letter from Serpent. I had a very lengthy discussion with Serpent as to why I wasn't copied on the letter that referenced me. But he did mention that, they thought we should talk about it. What he didn't mention was in the letter from Serpent, they stated that the new version is not as strategic or as true to the 2012 report as the original was. We suggest reverting to the original list of 11 allowed uses and 5 prohibited uses. The current article, and that's my main, it allows almost anything. There's only 3 things, if you read it, there's only 3 things that are prohibited. Yes, there are some that need a special permit, but the 3 items prohibited are big box retail stores, and that's defined as greater than 50,000 square feet. So I guess if you put a big box store in that's 49,999 square feet, it's okay. I don't want that in my backyard. The next item that's not allowed is a used car or used motor vehicle sales. So I guess you can put a new car, motor vehicle sales there. And the last one, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why they picked this one out, is tattoo parlors. If any of the things are less annoying to the neighborhood, a tattoo parlor is the least disruptive to the neighborhood. I'm going to tell you why. We don't like the article, or I don't like the article. Why anyone else doesn't, I can't speak to them. The mixed use would allow for anything to be built from the Taunton line to 495. The exception would be the 3 items that I mentioned to you. This means 24-hour gas stations, strip malls, 24-hour fast food restaurants, hotels, parking garages, and anything else a developer wants. It would convert Broadway into a road similar to Route 44. But the main difference between Route 138 and Route 44 is as follows. If you go from Orchard Street west on Route 44, the businesses on the south side of Route 44 have behind them the Taunton River and Route 24. No homes. If you go to the northern side, those businesses, the Stop and Shops, the Shores, behind them are the loading docks or the backs of those businesses. Now I grant you, that street is, and I always confuse whether it's South Street, east or west. I think it's east. They do have houses there. There's about 12 of them. Route 138, if you go behind those houses that abut Route 138, there are thousands of residential homes there. Thousands. Not 12, not 15, but thousands of residential homes that will be affected by the ding-ding of the 24-hour gas station, the drive-up window of the McDonald's, or not McDonald's, but maybe Wendy's, because McDonald's doesn't need a second one there. There's a big difference. That road isn't even as wide as Route 44. That's my objection. They could tear, what will happen is they'll go in and buy maybe a rundown business or a business not doing too well, or 3 houses, and tear them down and put in what they want. None of those houses would fit a big box store, those lots. I grant you that. But they have the ability now with this to take multiple houses and make it into one lot. And to your point, you know, maybe the Attorney General is okay with the way it was submitted, but it sure doesn't seem like it's the right way. And he stated that you selectmen submitted that article. Do you agree with that statement? That you submitted that Article 24? Nobody's saying anything. Did you submit it or not?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said select. I should have said Mr. Pacheco. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Did you submit that article?
There's 3 of us, correct?
I certainly am.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
So could I ask you to answer my question? Did you submit that article?
We submitted it to the warrant, yes.
But was it your article of submission?
We submitted it to the warrant when it came to us.
And that was in that vote that Dave put in the memo that you unanimously voted for it?
Correct.
Okay, that vote never happened at that meeting. I ask you to please look at that video if you would.
For the warrant, which includes that.
I think my colleague has a comment, Mr. Texera, if you
Sure.
indulge.
We voted for the warrant in its entirety, that included that.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I am opposed to the article, the way it's written, and what it allows to happen. That's all I have to say. Anyone have any questions for me? Thank you.
Mr. Iafredi.
Again,
You may have that as well.
trying to mitigate everyone's concerns. If you look at the prohibited uses, 20.8 and 20.9, most of those things that John's concerned about are not going to happen in the residential D. And anything else that's going to be coming forward is going to be by special permit through the planning board. So there are going to be controls that are built into this.
Ms. Nickerson.
Can I come up and ask Bob a question to explain that more in depth? Like, that residential D that I spoke about, with the lot that has the huge residential A behind it, aren't 24-hour businesses, drive-up windows, and entertainment allowed in that area without special permit? Is that correct?
excluding residential D.
I'm not talking about the residential D, I'm talking about 3/4 of the same lot that's residential A behind the residential
So
D.
when the standards that conflict, you revert to the base district standards, which would be residential A.
So can I just get a yes or no? Are 24 hours, drive-up windows and entertainment going to be allowed in that lot?
No. There's a conflict, it's not allowed.
So that's positive, a blanket statement, they cannot have those in anywhere from the 495 overpass down to the Taunton line, anywhere. In any lot,
By special permit.
By special permit.
but it only excludes it in the residential
Excludes
D.
the residential D and anywhere else which is allowed, because majority of Front 138 is business. We have it in there as special permit, so they have to go through the venting process, and we have
Site plan approval.
site plan approval, we have the North Raynham overlay district for water. There's so many things that will come into play when anybody wants to.
But residential A will no longer be residential A, it'll be this mixed-use overlay district behind residential D. It'll be, because it'll all be the mixed-use overlay district, residential D, and the A lot behind it.
Correct.
So then they'll only be excluded in residential D, and only in the front part of the lot.
And in the back part of the lot, it'll be special permit only. And if the
Well,
special
that-
permit, just like in our discussions, we have 50-foot buffer zones, we have trees, we have fence. We have a 112,000 square foot building that was approved on Route 44 with all beautiful houses on Judson Street that we put in so many,
Okay, I see you talking about that buffer zone, but what about the 20-foot setbacks and such, the front, the sides, and the back, and all that? In this mixed-use overlay
We're
district?
gonna keep, I could keep going, if not, I don't know what you wanna
I
do.
think we beat it to death.
We've done this enough.
One last thing, just to talk to something that John said before. We did change some things that Serped had wanted us to talk, put back in.
5 feet off the road.
One of the biggest things we did is we changed the density. Because when I first looked at this article, they wanted 3-foot and 5-foot setbacks, which didn't make any sense. They wanted the buildings up against the road. They wanted the parking in the back of the buildings. They wanted these buildings to be really tight together. As a committee, we decided that was too much.
Suicidal.
So we moved everything back, and we have standard setback requirements, as you see here in 20.6. So that was one major change that we did, that Serped had wanted to revert back to the original document.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Mr. Gelfi?
Under the zoning, and I'm sorry, I couldn't find anything, so I'm asking you now. Are there trucking firms, or, so G Lopes is down the end near Market Basket. Are there other trucking firms that could move in if this comes through? Are they allowed? Because I'm thinking that none of this is gonna have to help the traffic, in my view. I mean, I don't see the traffic improving. I'm afraid of more trucks pulling in and going out onto 138.
The one good thing, Tony Macedo, I was at his office, and he said he just falls out of his desk, his chair, when trucks go by. Taunton Dump, and you can, this is what I heard, has 2 years, they're closing, they're done. Majority of the trucks that go there are either Lopes Construction going to his pit, or going to the Taunton Dump. The Taunton Dump, they have those roll-off containers that shake the whole road and shake everybody's houses. As soon as they close, that's gonna eliminate a lot of those trucks. I would hope G. Lopes would use this mixed-use overlay district and do something like Norton, or in Norton, and develop that area and get rid of all the trucks. That would be our goal. Whatever he does there is his right, it's just, he's basically been there for a long time, and we can't stop him.
But I'm asking if another property owns,
That's okay.
if
If
another
another property
property
comes in
owner
for a
could-
trucking terminal, they would have to go through the entire process. Bob had people down at 138 on the other side, over near the dog track. Just all of a sudden, started coming up and parking a whole bunch of, they cleared the parking lot, put stone down, started parking trucks. And we discussed it and said, no, he has to come for site plan approval. And if he came in front of the planning board for site plan approval, we would have required fencing, trees, we don't wanna see that stuff. Just like the trucking store, you keep going down 138. That fence was on state property. Well, we filed a complaint with the state, and we made them remove the fence, because half of it was falling down. It looks like heck. So our goal is to clean it up. So no, a trucking company would not be able to come into 138. They wouldn't be able to afford for all of the conditions that we would have to put on
Okay,
the plan.
but they could, if. So the answer is yes, you don't think they would, but the answer is yes, they would,
They can
they
do
would
it
be
now,
allowed,
but they
right?
can do it now.
Yeah.
It's in the business zone, majority of 138 is business zone, they can do it now.
Briefly?
Briefly, very good. Yes, I would just like to ask the town council that if you research this about the February 10th, would we be able to get an appeal of this article based on this, because of the February 10th date?
I will research it, and I will let you know exactly what it says and exactly, I can't tell you, well,
Because, I mean,
I'll let
this
you know
is news
exactly
to
what
me
it
too,
says.
I thought everything was April 10th, not February 10th, so I'm just saying.
It doesn't sound like it makes sense to me,
Yeah, it doesn't-
April 10th, I mean, I don't know. I mean, how frequently does something get done by April 10th? I mean, usually, from my past experience, the way it works is typically the 2 weeks before the town meeting back. Meaning, as long as you get it the 2 weeks before, and it's posted the 2 weeks before, it's fine. So usually the way it's done is backwards, if you know what I'm saying, Lorraine? It's not usually that it has to be in by February 10th, and if not, it's done. It's usually, can it be posted in time, so that it's 2 weeks before the town meeting, so that it's not a problem. So I'm not sure, and I think if you think about it, and obviously I have not been town council for that long, but my involvement in other towns as well as this one, that's a lot earlier than probably anything that's on there was put on, I would guess.
I can tell you, Lorraine, that we get, so the article goes, the warrant goes through various drafts, and the first submission of all department heads results in a draft. Is Dave still here? No? Results in a draft warrant. And I get that draft warrant because I'm part of the process for reviewing the articles for appropriateness. And I've never seen a draft warrant before, let's say, mid-April. Certainly not February 10th. So we're gonna have to do some research.
Yeah, I'm just saying, this is what it says in that bylaw.
Yep, there may be a very good explanation.
I don't know.
It was probably written back in
Could have been.
1900.
Could have been.
Still a bylaw. Still a bylaw.
Yeah, yeah.
It might be.
Bylaw.
Yeah. Or it could be a stale bylaw on the website, which would not be out of the question. Anything further? So we'll have some things resolved by next Monday night. Town council has got a full agenda ahead of him. Let me ask both the proponents and the opponents, do we intend to have any presentations, post any pictures? If we do, we need to coordinate that in a common area. So,
I'll probably have Bob will have the map, and I'll probably put up some pictures about,
where would you prefer to do that, Dan? Out in the lobby or in front of the?
probably in the lobby when people walk by.
Okay.
I took the time to take the pictures, I might as well show them.
Yep. Is that, Lorraine, would that be acceptable to you as well in the lobby with your pictures?
Sure.
Okay, great. So, Bob?
Probably gonna be a handout, because the article does talk about the attachment as a map, so probably make some copies.
Hand out the map?
Yeah,
Do that at the registration table?
sure.
And I will be reading this. I gave you a copy, right? I'll give you a copy.
Yeah, let me just peruse it real quick.
And anyone
so I
else
can-
who'd like a
So I can
copy,
give you some
it
direction
explains
here.
what it can really do.
So one thing that's not going to happen on town meeting floor is we're gonna have this issue about the appropriateness of the article resolved by Monday night. By appropriateness, I mean, did it follow the proper procedures and processes? Is it in legally binding form? So, if this article stays on the warrant, gets to the floor, there'll be no discussion about who did what and who did it when. We will stay with the four corners of the article. We will discuss the article on its merits. We'll make the assumption that Town council, in conjunction or coordination with the Attorney General, has determined that the article is appropriate. And if he has determined that the article is appropriate, there will not be discussion on the floor about whether or not it is appropriate or inappropriate. We will stick to the merits of the article. Clear?
You got it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Anything further? Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank
We'll see you Monday night. Please arrive early if you can.